The morning I found out Kinsley got into her dream, university should have been a celebration for our family. Instead, it became another reminder of exactly where I stood in the hierarchy of my parents' affections. I was 22, working 2 jobs while finishing my undergraduate degree at the local state college. Kinsley was 19, fresh out of her gap year of finding herself in Europe. A trip fully funded by our parents, of course. "Isn't it wonderful?" Mom gushed, holding up the acceptance letter like it was made of gold. "Our Kinsley, going to Stanford for her business degree. We're so proud." Dad was already on his laptop, transferring money into Kinsley's account. "First semester's tuition is already taken care of, sweetheart. And we've set up a monthly allowance for living expenses. You won't have to worry about anything except your studies." I sat at the kitchen table, my own stack of bills hidden under my textbook. The rejection letter from the MBA program I'd applied to was still fresh in my mind. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I couldn't afford the application fee for more than one school. I'd chosen wrong. "That's amazing, Kinsley," I said, forcing a smile. My sister twirled around the kitchen in her designer dress. Another gift from our parents. Her blonde hair catching the morning light perfectly. Everything about Kinsley was perfect. Her grades, her social life, her relationship with our parents, even her mistakes were somehow charming. "Thanks, sis," she said, but her eyes were already calculating something. They always were when she looked at me. "Mom says you're still at that community college? Still working at the coffee shop?" "State college," I corrected quietly. "And yes, I'm still working. Someone has to pay for their education." The temperature in the room dropped. Dad looked up from his laptop, his expression hardening. "We've been through this, Emma. We offered to help you with community college." "State college," I repeated, louder this time. "But you insisted on that expensive computer science degree. We told you to choose something more practical, like Kinsley's business degree." More practical, because apparently, in their minds, the tech industry was just a passing fad. Never mind that I'd been coding since I was 12, or that I'd won 3 hackathons in the past year alone. None of that mattered because Kinsley had decided business was the future. So business became the only respectable choice. "I'm managing fine on my own," I said, standing up to leave. "Barely," Kinsley muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "I saw you eating ramen for the 3rd day in a row yesterday." Mom's face scrunched in disapproval. "Emma, if you're struggling that much, maybe you should reconsider your choices. Take a semester off, save some money." "I graduate in 3 months," I interrupted. "I'm not taking a semester off." "Well, don't come crying to us when you can't find a job with that degree," Dad said, returning to his laptop. "Kinsley's business degree will open doors. She'll probably be running her own company within 5 years. Kinsley preened at the praise, shooting me a triumphant look. This was how it always went. Every achievement of mine was diminished, every struggle was my own fault, and every success of Kinsley's was treated like a miracle from heaven. 3 months later, I did graduate. With honors, actually, though you wouldn't know it from my family's reaction. They came to the ceremony, sat in the back, and left immediately after without attending the reception. Kinsley had a sorority event that night, and apparently, that took priority. But something else happened that day that changed everything. My Aunt Margaret approached me after the ceremony, while I was standing alone in my cap and gown, watching other families celebrate. "Emma, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a warm hug. Aunt Margaret was my mom's sister, but they'd been estranged for years over some business dispute I'd never fully understood. "Congratulations. I'm so proud of you." I hadn't seen her in nearly 5 years, but she looked exactly the same, elegant, confident, with kind eyes that actually saw me. "Aunt Margaret, what are you doing here?" "I've been keeping tabs on you," she admitted. "Your mom might not brag about your achievements, but your professors certainly do. Professor Chen couldn't stop talking about your senior project when I called the department." "You called my department?" She smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I have a proposition for you, Emma. I know you've been accepted to the MBA program at Northwestern. Don't look so surprised. Professor Chen mentioned that too. I also know you deferred admission because you couldn't afford it." My cheeks burned with embarrassment. "It's fine. I'll work for a few years, save up, or," she interrupted, "you could let me help you." I shook my head immediately. "I can't take your money, Aunt Margaret. I appreciate it, but not my money," she said. "An investment. I've seen your work, Emma. Your senior project on supply chain optimization using machine learning? That's exactly the kind of thinking the business world needs. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering to invest in someone I believe will give me an excellent return on that investment. Mom and Dad don't need to know," she finished. "This is between you and me. Your parents made their choice about which daughter to support. Let me make mine." The offer was tempting. So tempting it made my chest ache. "What would you want in return?" "Come work for my company after you graduate. 2 years, that's all. After that, you're free to go wherever you want, and we'll call the debt paid." I looked across the quad where my parents were fawning over Kinsley, who'd come to my graduation in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They were taking selfies, laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that their other daughter was standing 50 feet away. "Okay," I said, turning back to Aunt Margaret. "Yes. Thank you." She squeezed my hand. We'll keep this between us. As far as your parents know, you're taking that job at the startup you mentioned. The less they know, the less complicated this will be. The next year and a half was the hardest and most rewarding of my life. I worked at a startup during the day, attended MBA classes in the evening, and studied until my eyes burned every night. Aunt Margaret's investment covered tuition and books, but I still paid for everything else myself. I wanted to prove to her, to myself, maybe even to my absent family, that I could do this. I rarely went home during this time. Holidays became excuses to work extra shifts or get ahead on coursework. When I did visit, it was always the same story. Kinsley would regale everyone with tales of her sorority adventures, her internships at prestigious companies, arranged by Dad's connections, naturally, and her plans to revolutionize the business world. My parents would hang on every word while barely asking me about my little job. They didn't know I was consistently in the top 5% of my MBA class. They didn't know I'd been selected for a prestigious case competition team. They didn't know that recruiters from Fortune 500 companies were already reaching out to me. But Kinsley knew something was different. She'd always had a sixth sense for when I might be succeeding at something. "You seem different," she said during one of my rare visits home, studying me with those calculating eyes. "You're not as desperate as usual." "Thanks for the compliment," I said dryly, focusing on my coffee. "I'm serious. You're hiding something." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Did you meet someone? Is some guy paying your bills now?" The assumption that I could only improve my situation through a man's help was so typically Kinsley, and so typically what my parents would think too. "Just working hard, Kinsley. You should try it sometime." Her face flushed. "I work hard. I'm maintaining a 3.8 GPA while being social chair of my sorority and while Mom and Dad pay for everything," I finished. "Including that new Mercedes you're driving." "It was a safety issue," she said defensively. "My old car was unreliable." Her old car was 2 years old. That night, I made the mistake of leaving my phone unlocked while I went to help Mom with dinner. When I came back, Kinsley was scrolling through it with a smirk on her face. "Give that back," I said, reaching for it. She danced away, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Northwestern MBA program? Emma, are you seriously pretending to be in grad school?" My blood ran cold. "I'm not pretending anything. Give me my phone." "Oh my God, you are. You're actually trying to fake being in an MBA program? That's pathetic, even for you." I finally managed to grab my phone back, but the damage was done. Kinsley had that look, the one that meant she'd found ammunition and was going to use it. "I'm not faking anything," I repeated firmly. "Sure you're not," she said with a laugh. "God, wait until Mom and Dad hear about this. Their desperate daughter, pretending to go to Northwestern. What's next? Are you going to fake a job at Google?" I should have known Kinsley wouldn't let it go. She never could resist an opportunity to make me look bad, especially if it made her look better by comparison. But I underestimated just how far she'd go. 2 weeks after that visit, I was in the middle of a financial modeling exam when my phone started buzzing incessantly. I ignored it. This exam was worth 30% of my grade. But it kept going, and eventually the professor noticed. "Miss Chen," he said sternly, "please silence your phone or leave the examination room." Mortified, I quickly switched it to airplane mode and refocused on my exam. 2 hours later, when I finally turned my phone back on, I had 43 missed calls from my parents and over 100 text messages. The first one from my dad made my stomach drop. "How could you betray us like this?" I called him immediately, my hands shaking. "Dad, what's going on?" "Don't you dare," he snarled. And I'd never heard him sound so angry. "Don't you dare pretend you don't know what you've done." "I honestly don't. Kinsley showed us everything, Emma. The emails, the messages. We know about you and Margaret. We know about the lies you've been spreading about us, about how you've been trying to sabotage our family business." "What emails?" "Dad, I haven't—" "Stop lying." My mother's voice came through. They had me on speaker. "Margaret sent Kinsley copies of everything. All your correspondence about how we're unfit parents, how we're financially irresponsible, how you're going to help her take over the family business once you graduate." My mind was reeling. "Mom, I've never said any of those things. I haven't even talked to Aunt Margaret, and I caught myself. I couldn't admit to the MBA funding without raising more questions." "In what, Emma? You haven't talked to her in what?" "In years," I lied, my heart pounding. "Not since graduation." "Kinsley has screenshots," Dad said coldly. "Email after email of you trashing us to Margaret, promising to give her inside information about our company, agreeing to help her destroy us. Those have to be fake, Kinsley." "Kinsley is the one who discovered your betrayal," Mom interrupted. "She was worried about you, wanted to help you, and she stumbled upon your secret email account. Thank God she did, or we never would have known what kind of snake we'd raised." "Mom, please, just listen." "No, you listen," Dad said. "You have 1 hour to come home and get your things. After that, you're no longer welcome in our house. You're no longer our daughter." "Dad, you can't be serious." 1 hour, Emma, and don't even think about trying to manipulate us with tears or excuses. We've seen exactly who you are now." The line went dead. I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at my phone in disbelief. Kinsley had fabricated emails. She'd created an entire false narrative, and my parents had believed it without even giving me a chance to defend myself. With shaking fingers, I called Aunt Margaret. Emma? Sweetheart, what's wrong? You sound… Kinsley told my parents we've been in contact. She created fake emails making it look like I'm betraying them to you. There was a long pause. Oh, Emma, I was afraid something like this might happen. Your sister. She called me last week, pretending to be you. I thought it was strange, but I didn't engage. She must have been fishing for information. She's destroyed everything, I whispered. They've disowned me. I drove home in a daze, my mind struggling to process what was happening. When I arrived, there were boxes on the front porch, my things hastily thrown together. The locks had already been changed. Kinsley stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a satisfied smile on her face. Behind her, I could see our parents in the living room, deliberately not looking in my direction. You have 10 minutes to load your car, she said sweetly. After that, Dad's calling the police. Kinsley, why? I asked, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay strong. What have I ever done to you? She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only I could hear. You were going to surpass me. I could see it. The secret late-night studying, the new confidence, the way you've been carrying yourself. You were up to something, and I couldn't let you win. This isn't a competition. Everything is a competition, she hissed. And I always win. You should have stayed in your lane, Emma. The struggling older sister, the cautionary tale that makes me look even better. But you had to try to rise above your station. My station? We're sisters. No, she said, stepping back with that perfect smile. We're not anymore. You made your choice when you conspired with Aunt Margaret. Now live with the consequences. I'll tell them the truth. I'll prove those emails are fake. She laughed, a tinkling sound that I'd once found charming. Go ahead. Who do you think they'll believe? Their golden child who's never lied to them, or the daughter who's been secretly meeting with their estranged sister behind their backs? She knew. Somehow, she knew about the MBA funding. Maybe she'd seen more on my phone than just the Northwestern emails. Maybe she'd been watching me more carefully than I'd realized. 10 minutes, she repeated, then shut the door in my face. I loaded my boxes into my car, each one feeling heavier than the last. 24 years of my life, reduced to 6 cardboard boxes and a garbage bag of clothes. As I drove away, I saw my parents watching from the window. Mom was crying, but not the way you cry when you're sad. She was crying the way you cry when you've been betrayed. They really believed I was the villain in this story. I called Aunt Margaret from a rest stop an hour later, unable to see through my tears enough to keep driving. Come here, she said immediately. I have a guest room. You'll stay with me. I can't. You can and you will. Emma, listen to me. I know this feels like the end of the world, but it's not. It's the beginning of something better. You're 3 months from graduating at the top of your MBA class. You have job offers lined up. You have a future that doesn't depend on their approval. They're my family, I sobbed. No, sweetheart. Family doesn't do what they just did to you. Family doesn't choose one child over another so blatantly. Family doesn't throw you away without even listening to your side of the story. She was right, but it didn't make the pain any less real. 3 years. That's how long it took for karma to come calling. In those 3 years, I graduated summa cum laude with my MBA. I landed a position as a strategic consultant at one of the big 3 consulting firms. I traveled the world, advised Fortune 500 companies, and built a reputation as someone who could turn around failing businesses. I also spent those 3 years in therapy, working through the trauma of being discarded by my family. Aunt Margaret was there for every milestone, every breakdown, every triumph. She became the mother I'd always needed but never had. I learned through mutual acquaintances that Kinsley had graduated and immediately been given a vice president position at my parents' company, a mid-sized manufacturing firm that had been in the family for generations. She'd married some hedge fund guy she met at a charity gala, had a wedding that reportedly cost $500,000, and was living in a mansion in the suburbs. My parents, meanwhile, had told everyone that I'd run off to join Aunt Margaret in some vindictive plot to destroy the family business. They'd painted themselves as the victims of an ungrateful daughter's betrayal. Most people believed them. Why wouldn't they? They were respected business owners. Kinsley was the perfect daughter. I was just the bitter sibling who couldn't handle being overshadowed. I'd built a new life, a good life. I had friends who actually cared about me, colleagues who respected me, and a mentor in Aunt Margaret who believed in my potential. I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. I was happy. Or at least, I was learning to be happy. Then, on a random Thursday afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. Emma? There are some people here to see you. They say they're your parents? My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen or spoken to them in 3 years. Did they say what they want? No, but… She hesitated. They look desperate. I could have sent them away. Should have, probably. But curiosity won out. Send them in. They looked older. Much older. Mom's perfect hair was streaked with gray, and Dad's confident posture had been replaced by something defeated. They sat across from my desk like clients, which I suppose in a way they were. Emma, Mom started, her voice weak. You look… successful. I said nothing, waiting. Dad cleared his throat. We need your help. No. You haven't even heard. I don't need to, I said calmly. The answer is no. The company is failing, Dad blurted out. We're 3 months from bankruptcy. I leaned back in my chair, studying them. And we need someone who knows how to turn businesses around, Mom said, tears in her eyes. We need you. You have Kinsley. Your golden child, the one with the business degree and the VP title. Why isn't she fixing this? They exchanged a look that told me everything. She's part of the problem, Dad admitted quietly. The story came out in pieces, each more damning than the last. Kinsley, in her role as VP of Operations, had made a series of catastrophic decisions. She'd outsourced production to save costs without properly vetting suppliers. The quality had plummeted, contracts were lost, and lawsuits were piling up. She'd also been embezzling, though my parents didn't use that word. They called it misallocating funds for her personal expenses. A few thousand here and there, Mom said defensively. She didn't realize. She knew exactly what she was doing, I interrupted. Kinsley always knows what she's doing. But it got worse. When the company started failing, instead of admitting her mistakes, Kinsley had doubled down. She'd taken out loans in the company's name without board approval, falsified financial reports to hide the losses, and even sold off company assets to cover her tracks. The FBI is investigating, Dad said, his voice hollow. We could lose everything. The house, our savings, everything. And you want me to what? Make it all go away? Save you from the consequences of your choices? We want you to save the company, Mom pleaded. It's been in the family for 60 years. Your grandfather built it from nothing. The same family that threw me out with 6 boxes and a garbage bag, I asked. That family? We were wrong, Dad said, the words seeming to physically pain him. We know that now. Kinsley, she admitted to creating those emails. After everything started falling apart, she admitted it. I felt no vindication, just exhaustion. And what did you do when she admitted it? We forgave her, Mom said quietly. She's our daughter. So was I. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Will you help us? Dad asked finally. I pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. This is a good bankruptcy attorney. He'll help you navigate the process. Emma, please. I'm not going to save your company, I said firmly. I'm not going to save Kinsley from the FBI. And I'm not going to pretend that 3 years of abandonment can be erased just because you need something from me now. We're your parents, Mom cried. No, I said, standing up. You were my parents. You stopped being that the day you chose to believe Kinsley's lies over giving me a chance to explain. The day you changed the locks without even listening to my side of the story. We'll make it right, Dad promised desperately. We'll tell everyone the truth about what Kinsley did. The truth? I laughed bitterly. The truth is that you raised one daughter to believe she could do no wrong and another to believe she could do no right. The truth is that you created this situation through decades of favoritism and enabling. The truth is that even now, after admitting Kinsley lied, stole, and committed fraud, she's still living in your house while I was thrown out for crimes I didn't commit. They left my office that day defeated, but they didn't give up. The calls started immediately, dozens a day, text messages, emails, even handwritten letters delivered to my apartment. Kinsley started reaching out too, though her approach was different. She sent me a single email. Emma, I know you hate me, and you have every right to. What I did 3 years ago was unforgivable, but this isn't about me anymore. Mom and Dad are going to lose everything. They're in their 60s. They won't recover from this. I'm begging you, not for me, but for them. Please help. Your sister? Kinsley. Your sister. As if that word meant anything anymore. Aunt Margaret advised me to block them all, and I did, but the damage was already done. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at work. The guilt was eating me alive, which was ridiculous. I was the victim here. But watching your parents' lives crumble, even parents who had failed you so spectacularly, wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined it would be. Then Marcus called. Marcus was my college roommate's brother, now working at the FBI. We'd stayed in touch over the years, and he knew my family situation. Emma, I shouldn't be telling you this, he said without preamble, but your sister is about to be arrested. The fraud charges are serious. We're talking about 20 years serious. Why are you telling me this? Because your parents are listed as co-conspirators. They signed off on the falsified reports. They might not have known what they were signing, but ignorance isn't a defense. They're looking at prison time too. My hands went numb. What? If you have any way to help them, any information that might minimize their involvement, now would be the time. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. Then I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I called my parents. Emma? Mom's voice was desperate, hopeful. I need you to listen very carefully, I said. Do not sign anything else. Do not talk to anyone else about the company. Get a criminal defense attorney immediately. Criminal defense? Emma. What? The FBI is about to arrest Kinsley. And possibly you. The silence on the other end was deafening. We didn't know, Dad whispered finally. We signed what she told us to sign. We trusted her. Like you should have trusted me, I thought but didn't say. I'm going to send you a lawyer's contact, I said instead. A good one. Tell them everything. Every document you signed, every decision Kinsley made, everything. Why are you helping us? Mom asked. I thought about it for a moment. Because you're going to need to testify against Kinsley to save yourselves. And because I want you to finally see her for who she really is. Consider it my parting gift. The arrest happened 2 days later. It was all over the news. Local business heiress arrested for fraud. The pictures of Kinsley being led away in handcuffs were everywhere. She looked shocked, as if she genuinely believed consequences would never catch up to her. My parents took my advice and cooperated fully with the FBI. Their lawyer, one I'd recommended and whose retainer I'd secretly paid, managed to get them immunity in exchange for testimony. They had to watch as every detail of Kinsley's deception was laid bare in court. But the investigation revealed more than just Kinsley's recent fraud. It uncovered a pattern of behavior going back years. She'd been stealing from the company since the day she was hired. She'd been falsifying her college records, that 3.8 GPA she'd bragged about, more like a 2.3. The internships? Fabricated. Even some of her sorority positions had been lies. The prosecutor reached out to me during the investigation. They'd found evidence of Kinsley's email fabrication scheme against me. She'd kept templates on her computer, apparently proud of her work. Would you be willing to testify? The prosecutor asked. It establishes a pattern of deceptive behavior. I agreed, not out of revenge, but because it was the truth. And the truth, after 3 years of lies, felt like freedom. The day I testified was the first time I'd seen Kinsley since she'd shut the door in my face. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Her designer clothes had been replaced with a conservative suit that didn't quite fit right. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. As I detailed how she'd fabricated emails to destroy my relationship with our parents, I watched our parents in the gallery. Mom was crying. Really crying this time. Dad looked like he'd aged a decade in the past month. Did you ever find out why she did this to you? The prosecutor asked. She told me, I said, looking directly at Kinsley. She said I was trying to rise above my station. She said everything was a competition, and she always had to win. And how did her actions affect you? I lost my family, I said simply. I was disowned, thrown out, and painted as a traitor. I spent 3 years in therapy dealing with the trauma of being abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And yet you succeeded despite this? Not despite it, I corrected. Because of it. Being forced to stand on my own taught me that I was stronger than I knew. Having Aunt Margaret believe in me when my own parents didn't show me what real family looks like. The pain pushed me to prove, not to them, but to myself, that I was worth something. Kinsley was found guilty on all charges. 15 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole in 7. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time. There was no apology in her eyes, just the same calculating look she'd always had. Even then, she was probably trying to figure out how to turn this to her advantage. My parents approached me after the sentencing. We stood in the courthouse hallway, an awkward triangle of regret and broken trust. We're sorry, Mom said, the words barely a whisper. We're so sorry. We failed you, Dad added. We failed both of you, but especially you. I know, I said, because what else was there to say? Is there any chance? Mom started, then stopped. Could you ever forgive us? I'd thought about this moment a lot over the past months. I'd imagined being cold, cutting them off completely. I'd imagined falling apart, sobbing and accepting their apologies. But standing there, I felt neither anger nor sadness. Just clarity. I forgive you, I said, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You chose Kinsley over me every day for 24 years. When she lied about me, you believed her without question. When I succeeded, you ignored it. When I struggled, you blamed me. That's not something that can be fixed with an apology. We want to try, Dad said desperately. We want to make it right. Then do better with the next person in your life, I said. Learn from this. But I can't be your daughter again. That girl, the one who desperately wanted your approval, who would have done anything to make you proud, she doesn't exist anymore. You're all we have left, Mom sobbed. No, I said gently. You have each other. You have the chance to rebuild your lives without the toxicity that poisoned our family for so long. You have the opportunity to become better people, but you don't have me. That's a consequence you'll have to live with. I walked away then, my heels clicking on the courthouse floor. Behind me, I could hear my mother crying, my father calling my name. But I didn't turn back. Aunt Margaret was waiting for me outside, standing by her car with a proud smile. How do you feel? She asked. Free, I said, and for the first time in my life, I truly meant it. The company went bankrupt, as expected. The family legacy, 60 years of history, dissolved into nothing. My parents had to sell their house, their cars, everything to pay legal fees and settlements. They moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. I heard they were both working now, Dad as a consultant, Mom as a bookkeeper. Starting over in their 60s, learning what it meant to struggle. Sometimes I wondered if they thought about the irony, how they were now living the life they'd watched me live without concern, working multiple jobs, counting pennies, eating ramen when money got tight. But I didn't dwell on it. I had my own life to live, a successful career that I'd built myself, a chosen family in Aunt Margaret and the friends who'd stood by me, a therapist who'd helped me understand that my worth was never dependent on my parents' approval. And most importantly, I had the knowledge that when everything fell apart, when the lies finally came to light, I'd chosen truth over family, integrity over easy reconciliation, and myself over their manipulation. The golden child had fallen, the scapegoat had risen, and the family that had built its foundation on favoritism and lies had crumbled under the weight of its own deception. I was free, and that freedom was worth more than any apology they could offer.